Hey folks, with us today, Colin from Omni. Colin, super happy to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. First question I always ask, what problem does your company solve for its customers?
Yeah. So I have a long history in the sort of data and analytics space. I spent, early part of my career in finance and made my way through Google, some startups, and then spent the last 8 years at Looker. So I've been a BI practitioner for my whole life, and we are building the next great BI company. So the way I like to explain the sort of problem set for doing data analytics is that you really have this sort of bimodal way that people get at data. You have these very decentralized sort of concepts for how people try to explore data. So Excel is a canonical example where you get a data set, you can move very quickly on your own, and you can sort of draw conclusions independently. You don't need to work about oversight inside a business. The challenge is that when you have tens or thousands of people doing that inside an organization, you get disagreement between all these spreadsheets and different isolated concepts. And so the other side of data analytics is what I call centralized or governed BI. And these are the sort of big enterprise data analytics platforms that, the biggest companies in the world use, but also smaller companies use when you're trying to create central governance for an organization. So reliability. And the challenge is that there's this extreme tension between both sides of these worlds. You want to have sort of central source of truth and governance and centralization and your data team managing things, and you want to let users move quickly on their own. And frankly, no BI tool has ever done both of those things well. And we're trying to solve that problem. So build a universal sort of analytics product that can be centralized and governed and that the data team loves, and that can be decentralized and let users move as quickly as they want on their own without having to wait for the data team to do things for them. So that is the thesis that we are building towards.
And then right now, you're still quite early. You're not even 2 years in. Who's the typical buyer right now? Is it like the Fortune 5000 already or more like the tech scale-ups?
Yeah, we have a couple larger customers, and the ambition is that every single company in the whole world can use this product eventually. Maybe every single company with more than 10 people can use this product in the sort of grand scheme of things. I think as you build a company, so I was at Looker for 8 years before this. So I've gone through the life cycle from being a small startup that no one has heard of to this big company that got acquired for billions of dollars by Google. And I think the natural life cycle is that you need to kind of slowly prove yourself with larger and larger businesses over time. So our wheelhouse customer, most of our customers are in the sort of 50 to 200 employee range right now, with sort of ambition to kind of keep notching that number up by, another zero every single year. So like eventually that becomes the Fortune 5000 and the Fortune 500 and the Fortune 10. But it tends to be sort of younger tech forward companies, people that want to work with a company that is 18 months old. And we're going to work on making them successful, and then they can tell our story to the next sort of group of customers.
Amazing. And then just a bit of backstory.
Yep.
When you started your entrepreneurial career, you founded Primatable, had an exit with that.
Yep.
Then went to Looker, basically up to an exec role. And now that it's your second rodeo in terms of like founding a company.
Yep.
What's the thing you feel like you do most differently compared to the first one?
Oh man, everything. It's really funny because the first company that we did, and one of my co-founders here was actually the co-founder of my last company. So Jamie and I built the last one together. We were actually reversed. He was the CEO last time. And we were roommates in college, so we're super close. The last time we started a company, and the thesis was we were building something for ourselves. We wanted to start a company. There was no problem that we needed solving. There was no like market insight that absolutely had to be handled. The problem that we were solving was a personal one in that we wanted to go start a company. We were at Google for 5 years and we just wanted to do the startup thing. And it's very hard to start a company that way. Company building is so hard. There are just so many bad days and so many difficulties that you have to be very, very convicted in what you're doing. And so we built that previous company and it was nominally successful. Again, like we sold it. We built some really interesting stuff. We built a really good team. But there wasn't a problem that I woke up sort of like passionate about solving every single day. We sort of like stumbled into something that we were building for restaurants. It worked okay enough, and we sort of tried to grind it out from there. But like candidly, I spent a lot of days where I was just like, why are we doing this? Like, I don't really know why we're doing this. And it made every difficulty that much harder the first time. And so we ended up selling it. And for 10 years, I literally told people I would never start another company again. I said, I hated it. Like, I'm never going to do it again. It was the worst experience ever. Like, go find something and then like make it into a rocket ship. And at the tail end of Looker, like I had 2 years post acquisition to sort of where I was stuck with the company, and I really it gave me time to reflect on what I wanted to do and what I thought needed to exist. And I eventually came to sort of these concepts that are the underlying sort of strategy that we have for Omni. And it just felt like the product had to exist. It was like I wanted some of the good core centralized things from Looker, but like I loved writing SQL on my own. And I was like, we can go build something that brings these two things together. Like, this product needs to exist. I've talked to so many people about this. And the company almost just happened naturally after that, because when you have this sort of grain of a thing that needs to exist, like I can go evangelize what Omni is without trying. I don't need to sort of think about the messaging. I'm literally just telling the story of the problems that I've had with data, and it ties directly to sort of what we're building and how we're solving it. And I would say that that is such a superpower with starting a company, is sort of you need to create your own sort of reality distortion that your thing needs to exist. And in my opinion, like I'm of the mind that I can't sort of trick myself into believing. I need to actually believe. And so the single biggest thing is I believe in what we're doing right now. Like, I passionately care about the problems and the use cases. And that is huge. The second thing is there's the cliche, obviously, of like the Mark Zuckerberg 20-year-old founder thing. And it's kind of nice to be an old guy for this, in that for 8 years, I was talking to data people at Looker, and I probably literally talked to, 2,000 to 4,000 different companies about data. It makes it a lot easier to go build a data company when you've got to talk to 2,000 to 4,000 people. So I'm a huge believer in just like verticalized expertise and drawing on your network. Like LinkedIn is one of the main places that we post content. And I'm just able to talk to people that I've interacted with over the last decade in data. And it gives this sort of passive like wind in our sails that helps us build the company better. And so I'm not sort of like fighting in trying to convince people that we're important. Like, we're known in the ecosystem. And so like it's been very different this time. Like, I am always excited about what we're doing, and it is like easier in some sense. But really it's just that, we believe in what we're doing and we think it needs to exist.
If you need to hire the right developers and ship fast, then React Squad is for you. A boutique agency that specializes in React and only works with fast growth startups. Visit reactsquad.io to learn more.
Yeah. And I mean, you raised quite a lot of funding, so you're definitely going after the big leagues in terms of what you're playing. Tell us a bit about the fundraising journey, because just looking at your Vita basically looks like a dream for every CV.
Yeah,
for every VC money.
Yeah.
So, but tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, just massively fortunate to have the relationships that we had with venture going into this. And again, like, this is an advantage of just being older and haven't done it before. But I mean, obviously, when we sold Looker, we were building that company for 10 years. And a lot of the venture investors, like, they want to hold the company forever. And so it was really nice, because after I left Looker, I went and talked to a couple of former Looker board members, and this is within a week of leaving. And so Bill at First Round and Tomasz at Redpoint, we talked to literally within a week of leaving, and they were both sort of the mind, like, hey, there's still a huge opportunity there. Like, I know you, I trust you. They were both on the board for 10 years at Looker. And so we are trying to build a venture scale business, and that aligned with sort of the bet that they wanted to make. And we said, like, hey, we think that we can put a really good team together for this. Building a BI tool is hard. Like, you need to you need to go back and spend 2 years building product before you can really sell it. And so it is difficult, I think, to bootstrap into this market just because it's so crowded. But the flip side of that is that we're entering a space where there's 9 companies that have done $1 billion in revenue. And those are the good characteristics for a venture-backed business. Like extreme revenue scale, a team that's done it before, an idea in the market that really hasn't been executed on or executed on well. And so we were just able to tell that story, and a bunch of people said like, hey, I want to take this bet. And we said, great, like we're going to go take this, we're going to go take a really big swing at this. Like we are building a venture scale company. We're burning money right now. We have a big engineering team relative to our revenue.
How big is your staff right now? How many people work at Omni?
It's 31 people. So for, an 18-month-old company, it's fairly large, but 22 of us came from Looker and 5 of us came from my co-founder, our third co-founder's company, Stitch. So it's 31 people and 27 of us have worked together for like 5 to 10 years, building BI tools, which is like, we have this sort of powerful background where we could get everyone together and say like, great, like let's move really, really quickly and start building. And that's sort of the backdrop for how we got here, which has been, it's exciting. There's a lot of pressure though too. Like, we're not the bootstrap company that can go like talk to an acquirer anytime. Like we're signed up to go IPO later, and it's exciting, but we've played this game before, and it means that we have to, keep growing revenue forever.
What's the way that you handle that pressure?
So it's funny because I said pressure, but I feel like the pressure is actually theoretical for the most part. Like I took a class in college on stress, and stress was sort of summarized as a mismatch of expectations between reality and the individual. And this is like a gross oversimplification, so I don't even know if this is true, but I feel like a lot of stress is this idea that you should be doing something differently, or that something that is outside your control, that you think that you have control over, is sort of driving a mismatch there. And I feel like going back to sort of what I was saying about building this, like we have a thesis, we have a team that can go build it, and we have the support and sort of financing to go do it. And so the stress would be if sort of any of those things maybe weren't true, or I felt like I could control them. But like, honestly, I don't really feel day-to-day sort of stress. Like we have such a clear strategy. The business that I pitched 2 days after leaving Looker is the exact same product we have today. And it's changed in some ways, in that like we've had to refine our point of view, but the core of what we are doing, this sort of idea of decentralized and centralized, and being able to make end users successful and technical people successful, these are all the exact same ideas, which is great. It makes everything more tactical. So like I am very sad every single time we lose a deal. Like I want to win every single trial that we have, which is, if you've been in SaaS, it never works that way in an enterprise sales context, because there's more than one person in the sale. So, 2/3 of the people are losing. But I think as long as we are being realistic and executing well, like I'm just worried about, is the product getting better? Are we delivering a good customer experience? All of those sorts of things. And I'm not really thinking about, like IPO at $1 billion in revenue or something like that later. Cause like it's either happening naturally or it's not. What matters is like, do I win this next deal? Do I win the next deal? Is this customer happy? So like, I get stressed if someone fills out an NPS survey and we get a 7, and that shows up as like a detractor. And I hate NPS because 7s are detractors, but those are the ones that hurt. But like to that point, like why is that person not a 10? Let's go talk to them. Like it's controllable. So I'm big into like, let's just control the things that we can control. Like, valuations in the public markets are going to affect our valuation in some indirect way that I can't control for. Like we just have to try to grow revenue and do it rationally and have a real plan.
Absolutely. And then, you are for sure a data-driven person. With 30 people, as you said in the beginning, you're big enough to use BI internally as well. So how are you leveraging Omni to grow Omni?
Yeah. I am the BI team also, which is kind of pleasant. Like it's nice to just use your own product for, hours a day. I think I've got like 10,000 minutes in the product or something crazy. I mean, there's sort of two versions of it, which is like we're using Omni we're overusing Omni in some ways to just exercise the platform over and over again. And I do think like the single most powerful thing that you can do when you are building software is just use your software over and over again, like in as real use cases as you can. Like you can never fake using the product as well as just actually trying to do a thing. Like you try to make a graph in a BI tool and then you realize that like you don't really care what the graph looks like. But as soon as you need to actually go make a board slide or something like that, you're like, why can't I move this label? Like then you are actually, touching the product in a real way. I mean, the other thing is we have really orchestrated our business in a really significant way just to watch what our customers are doing. So we spend a lot of time just making sure our customers are using the product and trying to understand how they're using the product and things like that. So one of our sales engineers, she wrote a blog post about how we developed customer health, which is like one of my obsessions with sort of monitoring the business. So for every single customer, we are looking at how well they're using the kind of 5 or 6 most important features in the platform, whether they're growing, whether they're inviting users in. And we're looking at that. I look at it every single day. Like it comes into my inbox and I am looking at usage growth and users and things like that. So we're just paying a lot of attention. And it means that we can sort of pay a lot of attention to how people are using the product. I think the thing that we are not doing with data is sort of product management by A/B test. And I say that not completely dismissively because like if you're an e-commerce business at scale, that's how you do conversion rate optimization. Like if you have a marketplace that has booking.com scale, you have to be doing product management via A/B testing. But as a young company, like I kind of take pride in saying we don't listen to our customers in product development. And we say that facetiously. It's just, we don't want people telling us what to build. We want people telling us what the problems are that exist. And then we want to trust our own taste in what good product is. So like the single biggest thing that we've been working on lately has been this Excel style dialect. And kind of amusingly, no customer ever asked for it. Like table calculations was not something that people were sort of banging down the doors for or anything like that. But it was always this pain that I personally had in the product at Looker and before, which is like, why aren't BI tools building an exact syntactic sort of parallel to Excel? So why can't I click on a column and then click on another column and then put a plus in between them? And that's actually what we've built out. And what's been nice is just that we saw these problems, which is like, I want to do this thing really easily, or I want to make a graph that is like this really slight diff from this table. And then we got to go, figure out the actual solution for it. And I feel like that's where really great product comes from, is just like deeply understanding the problems. So definitely like a manage by numbers on pipeline activity and sort of like usage and things like that. But on like the product management side, it is much more naive. It's like, we're just trying to build good stuff and, not do too much of the numbers.
I think that's super important skill to know where do numbers and hard metrics make sense and where is intuition is maybe the wrong word, but being just like seeing what people need, having like hundreds of conversations, that ends up being intuition, even though it's just data throwing through your own body, basically.
No, that's exactly right. It's like, it's verbal data. It's just that like, I don't need to put it into a spreadsheet to make it data. And like people will tell us if the thing is good or bad. That's data. Like NPS scores are sort of data, but like you don't need to do an NPS survey to know what your NPS is. Like you can go talk to your customers also. And so I think you got to make sure that you're not getting too frozen up by analytics. I think the other sort of data mistake that people make is that people assume that using data means like doing regression or doing analysis or data science. And I'd argue a lot of data is literally just being able to pull out a row of data as easily as possible, which I know sounds really silly, but just being able to look up like, who is that customer? How much are they paying us? When is their renewal date? Who is the owner on the account? I know these are things that maybe you could go look up in Salesforce or Zendesk or some sort of product, in-app usage thing. But oftentimes that's not considered like data analysis, when operationally those things are the things that might take you 30 minutes that could take you 15 seconds that give the business a lot of leverage. And I think those are some of the most important sort of like data things that we do that aren't really data. They're much closer to just ops, that every business should be doing better. And it's all actually data readiness.
So it's less about being fancy with data and analyzing it too much, but more having it readily available. So if you need it between a meeting, you can just look at it.
It's exactly right. Like, I'm going to talk to this customer today. Are they using the product right now? Like, great. Like, let me see some notes on when we sold them the product. Like, has anything changed recently? Do they have any support tickets recently? These are, I don't know. They're not really data when it comes down to it. They're just like record lookup. But if it's hard, you won't do it. And if it's easy, you do it naturally. And I think those are the things that become really, really interesting.
Yep. Friction, as always. A very interesting way to move people away or towards things. Increase or decrease friction.
Yep.
Then the last thing, that's a very fuzzy question. But in terms of big vision, you mentioned it, like you drew it so clearly. So how do you, if you bring on someone new, how do you make sure that all of that knowledge and wisdom that the other teammates have get shared with their new person? Because I think it's amazing that you have so much just knowledge and like deep experience in the team.
Yep.
But I could imagine if someone joins, let it be like a salesperson or someone outside of the field, that it must be like a weird cultural thing that is like the in-group and potentially the out-group. So how do you manage that?
It's a very, very good question. And honestly, like, that is probably the single biggest risk for our company in the next sort of stage of our life. Again, like 22 lookers out of 31 people means that we have 22 people that have, 8 years of previous context and then 9 that don't. So the first thing is, I think we're terrible at it. Like, the thing about getting to hire 20 people that you worked with is that, like, we've gotten to be in some ways lazy about what we write down and sort of how we track these things. So we're trying to get better at it. I think the other thing is, it's been really interesting, just the sort of new way that sort of SaaS software is installed inside businesses, is that, like, we had a new sales rep and she just joined from Snowflake. And our other 3 sales reps are all former lookers. And she spent a lot of time just watching videos of our demo calls and things like that, but not like 2 hours of it, like 25 hours of it. And in some ways, that kind of stuff is magical because it gives you like passive context. Like, you get real conversations. It's like you were in those meetings as well. And things like that have been just amazing for letting people ramp. So, like, videotaping internal meetings and things like that. I mean, I think those are the problems that arise as you start to scale, is sort of like, how do you make it so that every employee has all the context of the previous employees? Like, my inclination is try to spend a lot of time with people as well. So just a lot of one-on-one time, which obviously doesn't scale. We're going to have to solve it. Is sort of the rambling answer is, I think that we need to get a lot better at it, and it's hard. Part of it is just like repetition and saying stuff over and over again. Like, I've probably done 500 demos at this point of Omni, and my talk track is like robotic at this point. I can just like go through a deck so easily. And at some point, it's just like, if you say the same things over and over again about centralized and decentralized, and what's kind of amazing is this new person actually came in and she started redoing some of our sales material in like the way that she understood it. And in some ways, it actually got better, because it's sort of like taking our understanding and combining it with someone who doesn't have our context. And she sort of talks about it as like the I don't know looker version of explaining your vision. And so in some ways, it's like, it's this sort of melding of everyone that comes in that happens naturally. But you have to write stuff down and try to be clear about it. Like, one thing that we were terrible about early was we would talk about all these lookerisms internally, and the non-looker people would be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so just like catching yourself when you're doing things like that, it's kind of similar to any sort of bias that you have when you're talking. You just need to be conscious of it. But we need to get better at sort of scaling knowledge.
I love that. And then final thing before you wrap up, where can people find you online?
Omni.co. We managed to get a very good URL. We're in a crowded namespace. This is part of our, either Omni is going to be a big deal and we'll be the Omni, or we won't matter. So we managed to get omni.co, but, fill out a form, send me an email, colin@omni.co. We will get in touch with you if you need data things.
And we're all rooting for you that it will be the Omni.
That's still the plan, again, though, going back to the earlier part of the conversation, at some point with the venture business, either you're the Omni or you don't matter. So it aligned with our thesis, which is just we're going to try to be the universal platform for data. And then Omni makes a lot of sense. And so we might as well be Omni.
Sometimes binaries can be way more fun than a thing in the gray.
Exactly. It gives you no embedded release valve, which, sometimes you want to be able to pull the ripcord, but not being able to, it means that you actually have to focus and go on and sort of push through. And I think that was one of the mistakes that we made the first time is we were ready to sell the company. I think we sold it after 14 months or something like that. And this one is I've already told my wife, this is my last job. So it's either going well or it's not, but I'm 100% focused on making it work.
So a different kind of conviction and commitment.
Yeah.
Amazing. Colin, thanks a ton for coming on. Let's wrap.
Yeah, this is great.
If you like this episode, then you'll love the SaaS Operator, a weekly newsletter brought to you by Early Node, with actionable insights from SaaS experts in the industry, delivered right to your inbox every Tuesday for free. Visit earlynode.com to subscribe.